Good to be joined again by the member for Mildura, Ali Kappa. Ali, how's it going on the campaign trail?
It's going well. Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah, I noticed you've had to sort of bat back a few criticisms. We talked about one of those last time we spoke, but just what is the situation with the Sea Lake Mallee Rally?
Yeah, so look, the legislation which has been in place since before I was elected makes it really clear what the process is for determining these sorts of issues. So we have traditional owners at the site who believe that there are concerns about the impacts that the rally is having on, certain antiquities. It's a very ancient lake bed, obviously, and there's been, quite a bit of archaeological and anthropological history attached to it. And the trouble is that that's now, threatening or potentially going to threaten a race that's been there for a long time as well. So all of that's being worked out according to legislative and regulatory rules. But for some reason, there's just been misinformation and people are getting angry and blaming me.
So for those that aren't familiar with the rally, it's an off-road race that's been going since the 70s, usually on the June long weekend, but it's hit this sort of, bump in the road, no pun intended, when it comes to the continuance of the race at Lake Tyrrell.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just difficult. I mean, I've done my very best to try and, promote a compromise and work towards a compromise and being quite actively involved, especially in the early stages, talking to contacts that I had to try and, build that goodwill between the parties to try and protect the race, but also to, allay the concerns of Aboriginal elders. So we were invited to make a submission to the Cultural Heritage or to the Cultural Management Plan. That was in February this year, which we did. And again, I've consistently from the very beginning advocated for a compromise. My pitch was that, to retain a section of the lake for the track, but then to kind of extend or to move the main part of the track to adjoining farmland properties as opposed to around the foreshore of the lake. And that's what, I'll continue to lobby for. That the issue is, there's been quite a bit of not just critical feedback, but abuse and aggressive abuse and persistent aggression by people who cannot be talked out of certain misinformation. Some are suggesting that I, personally cancelled the race. That I'm actively trying to lobby for it to be put somewhere else other than Sea Lake. Things that are just incorrect, and it's challenging to work in that environment. I always say I'm happy to be judged and criticised on the facts. That's fine. You wear that's part and parcel of the job. But when people jump on misinformation and run with it, and that's the basis on which they attack you, eventually you've just got to stand up and call time on that.
Now, you could probably correct me on this, but I do recall there was a councillor, I thought, in Mildura who stepped down due to what I think she called trolling on social media. Is this getting ugly in the political context in the Northwest on social media?
Oh, yeah, look, I think they would be two very different situations. I think that the trolling that was identified in that other case was more of a personal nature. But this is, this is on an issue of public policy, so that in itself is not so much the issue, but it's more about, I think when people sort of fixate on a target to focus their blame and their anger, that can become quite unreasonable and just frustrating, really, to deal with. It's because it's just fundamentally unfair. This is not my fault, but certain elements, I think, because maybe they just think I'm an easy target, decide to fixate and then continue on that line of attack. And sometimes in politics too, your opponents can capitalise on that. And fuel that misinformation. And I'm not saying that's necessarily happening, but, there's been some comments that have been quite suspicious. So what I'm just suggesting is, let's keep it a fair fight in this election. Let's not be spreading lies and misinformation, and let's just treat the issue for what it is. It's a vexed issue. It's a controversial issue. It's really difficult, You've got people who are a community that is moving definitely towards reconciliation and wanting to, respect Aboriginal, culture more. but sometimes the burden of that falls unevenly on us. Some of us don't have to make a personal sacrifice for that, whereas, you've got the community of Sea Lake and members of the Off-Road Club who do. And that is fun. That is just inherently hard. And I've really felt for that community. Sometimes you have a situation where both sides have very legitimate positions and views. And this is a classic example of that. We've got to work through it, and it's tough. But it's not okay to start laying into someone to make them the scapegoat on pure misinformation.
And to be clear on the information, your position is you support the rally continuing, but it would have a lesser role in direct, alignment next to the lake and more going through private properties.
That's right, exactly, and from what I gather from the official statements by my opponents or other sides in the political race, that's everyone's position. There doesn't seem to be much dissent on that. People are genuinely on the same page, and that's why it's frustrating that I'm sort of being unfairly positioned as kind of an opponent to what everyone is asking for, when really I was the first on board to be advocating for a compromise, and I've done it consistently all the way through, and it's just something that I think that we all need to be a bit more reasonable about.
Well, Ali Kappa, independent member for Mildura, good to get your position on the record on it. Thanks again for joining us on Flow.
No worries, thank you.